Even on a short week, the Seahawks have some lovely returns coming in the secondary. How big of a difference will it make against the Cardinals on Thursday Night Football? We're going to be diving in on our pregame show of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our pregame Thursday show by my co-host Nick Lee, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in, whether you're in Sacramento, California, or listening on the other side of the country in Providence, Rhode Island. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for being everydayers. We've got a Thursday night football matchup coming your way tonight. State Farm Stadium, NFC West clash. Seahawks traveling to face the Cardinals, and there's a lot at stake. Whoever loses this game is going to start 0-2 in the division. You don't want to end up in that hole even this early in the season. So a game with significant ramifications for being just Week 4. We're going to dive into the keys to victory, picks to click, and of course, our game prediction is going to be a loaded pregame episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now for your lead story here on our pregame edition of Locked On Seahawks. There may have only been 3 days in between games for the Seahawks, but that ended up being enough to get some key players back who did not play against the Saints on Sunday. And in particular, Nick, two big names in the secondary coming back to face a division rival in Arizona. Julian Love and Devon Witherspoon, both not on the final injury report. They don't even receive designations. And that's big news for the Seahawks. And in this particular game, getting Julian Love back is huge because of the tight end they're going to be dealing with. Trey McBride, who I think is a top 3 receiving tight end in the National Football League right now. He had 12 catches against Seattle last year in their second matchup. Now, Cardinals didn't score very many points in that game, obviously only 6 points, but McBride is a threat. He is a big-time weapon in the passing game, and having a third or fourth string safety in there against him, that could end up potentially being a huge problem. Luckily, Seattle is going to have Julian Love back, and Devon Witherspoon even will get some reps in the slot going up against Trey McBride as well. These are huge additions for this particular matchup, this opponent.
Sure, and also looking back to last week, we kind of figured, all right, if there's a team that the Seahawks can probably take extra precaution with to get guys healthy, it's against the Saints, and that turned out to be okay. And now that in the name of getting, Devon Witherspoon and Julian Love healthy for this matchup specifically, looks like that's going to pay dividends. I went last year too, and to the last meeting between the two, and I think it was week 14. And both Witherspoon and Julian Love faced a combined 6 targets against the Cardinals and combined to allow 3 catches for 15 yards. So obviously this is going to be a duo that is highly impactful in pass defense. And like you mentioned with McBride, he's honestly, I hope my fantasy team gets absolutely pulverized by this because McBride's my tight end. I'm hoping that I lose because the Seahawks shut him down. I think if I have to lose, that's going to be why, I hope. Because those two are just huge additions, like you said, to the secondary. And then even, I know that they're listed as questionable, but Zach Charbonnet and Anthony Bradford, and here we are in the year of our Lord 2025, relieved that Anthony Bradford might play. And that is, it's not necessarily because he's been, excellent along the offensive line, but the alternative to him playing, I think, is what I'm worried about. Not that I don't think Olu could slide into center and Sindel to guard. I think the Seahawks have a good thing going with their offensive line right now, and I would really hate for that to be upset by a guy going down and having a couple of guys jumbled around. Not that I don't think Sindel could be just as effective as a guard, but and with the run game, that there's chances and opportunities here in the run game, and I think if Zach Charbonnet is back, and then you got Bradford and your full offensive line healthy again. So if you compare Charbonnet once again with Ken Walker, have a healthy offensive line against this kind of defense, which the Cardinals do have a fairly strong defense. And just looking at the numbers, And so having your full stable of backs and offensive linemen is pretty key.
Yeah, it's, Bradford's injury situation, as you mentioned, Mike McDonald's already outlined this. If they had an injury at one of the guard spots, Jalen Sundell is going to move over to guard, and then Oluwatimi's going to come at center. And if you look at the depth chart, that is clearly the best alternative for them in that situation, because Olu is a proven veteran starter that at least has started a handful of games in the National Football League and looked decent doing that. So that's the best alternative, because otherwise you'd be putting Bryce Cabledew, the rookie, in at guard. And I don't think the Seahawks want to do that against Calais Campbell and company, a really good interior defensive line for the Arizona Cardinals. Not all of the injury news is positive, though. Josh Jones, the backup tackle, will not be available tonight, which means Mason Richmond is your swing tackle, another rookie that has not played any snaps in a regular season game in the NFL. He is going to be active for the first time, so you've got some depth concerns behind Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. Robbie Oots going to injured reserve, so he's going to miss at least 4 games. Sounds like they're optimistic that he's only going to need to miss the minimum, but high ankle sprain he suffered Sunday, so it's Brady Russell time at the fullback position. We won't see Oots knocking over 2 bowling pins at a time, at least for a month. So that is a significant departure. And Nick Emanwari, I was not surprised by this. Emanwari was actually a full participant. Not that the practices this week were anything substantial, because they weren't, but he was a full participant for practices this week. But I think this is an instance, if they would have been playing Sunday, I think Emanwari's got a good chance to return. But since it's a Thursday night game, you don't push it with a high ankle sprain. I expect that he is going to be back for Tampa Bay in week 5, but no Emanwari in this game. And the other questionable that I am wondering about a little bit, toe injuries can be fickle when you're talking about pass rushers. Boye Mafe listed as questionable, and you don't have Mafe in this game. That could be a big deal, because his athleticism setting the edge against the speedy Kyler Murray, not having him out there, I think could be a significant hit for Seattle's defense as well. But I think overall, looking at this injury situation, you're hoping that all your questionable guys can play. They all participated in practice, at least limited fashion. So you're hoping those guys can be ready tonight. But the really good news outweighs to me the negatives here against the opponent, getting back 2 of your very best players in Devon Witherspoon and Julian Love.
And sure, the Robbie Oots thing, what a drag, because he was so fun to watch. And it kind of feels like you have that Netflix show that you really, really like the first season. Then you read like, oh, when's the next season coming out? And it's like in 2 years. Like, oh, okay, fine. I'll wait.
Yeah, this feels like a Stranger's Thing type ordeal.
Yeah. Like he is coming back. He's not out for the season, but it's gonna be a bit of a wait. So patience. But what a world we live in, where we're just devastated at the injury of a fullback here in 2025. So and then looking also at the Cardinals, they're not exactly clean bill of health either.
Oh no.
Both tackles for Kelvin Beachum and Paris Johnson are both questionable for the Cardinals, and they had issues on the edges with the tackle situation. How is Evan Brown, old friend alert with a heel injury. Will Johnson, the corner, I think is doubtful. The rookie, the high draft pick, and Zay Jones out with a concussion. So Cardinals aren't exactly at full go either. And again, short week. This is the NFL. It's bound to happen. So it's not just the Seahawks, but I do think that just looking at the 2 health reports, I think it's advantage Seahawks.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And we'll see if Paris Johnson plays. That is going to be the crucial one, because he has emerged as one of the best young tackles in the NFL. And if he plays, Arizona's protection for Murray and the run game is going to be much more potent. But if he's not available, especially with Beachum not being 100%, that is a position the Seahawks can absolutely take advantage of. And the Will Johnson injury, the Cardinals have been able to withstand all these injuries they've had in the secondary. Garrett Williams is on the injured reserve as well. But you still have to wonder what that means going against one of the most explosive passing games so far in the NFL, when you're down to your 3rd, 4th, 5th string and you're playing safeties up at your slot position. A lot of different things Arizona is having to do right now. And so that is absolutely a storyline going to this game that is magnified by Will Johnson likely not playing tonight due to a groin injury. When we come back, what do the Seahawks have to do to get that third straight win and continue what has been a nice little run of dominance in Arizona? We'll get to that up next with our weekly keys to victory here on our pregame edition of Locked On Seahawks. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive, and that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on all the details, Mazda does the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive. In every crossover SUV, whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to the pregame Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined by my co-host Nick Lee. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We've got Thursday night football coming up, and not that long, a few hours away now at State Farm Stadium. Seahawks, Cardinals, NFC West battle. As I mentioned earlier, Nick, the loser falls to 0-2 in the division. Not the start you want to have in a very competitive NFC West. And I know it's early, but feels like a pretty decisive, pretty critical Week 4 Thursday night football matchup for the reason I just outlined here in a very competitive division. But let's get to our keys to victory, assembling a game plan. And these are two teams that are very familiar with each other, obviously. And there's a lot of players that were on these rosters last year. But at the same time, you always have to look at these with a fresh slate. And the Cardinals have made some changes that I think when you look from Seattle's offensive perspective, that you absolutely have to be able to account for. And look, when I look at this game, the thing that immediately jumps out to me is you have to stay patient with the run game because Arizona's run defense has been really solid these first 3 weeks. And Calais Campbell, I swear that guy's going to be 80 and he can still put pads on and be an issue. He is still a fantastic player. Dalvin Tomlinson is a really good nose tackle that creates problems in the run game. And just the aggressiveness of their front seven creates issues. However, that aggressiveness, I think it lends itself. We saw it in that matchup in Arizona last year. I know that Clint Kubiak is a zone-oriented scheme offensive coordinator, but he has shown earlier this year that he is willing to mix in gap schemes. And when you're playing a really aggressive defense like this that likes to send extra rushers, I think the gap scheme can be something they can lean on a bit more in this game. And, oh, by the way, Zach Charbonnet had a monster game in Arizona last year. A lot of those yards came on gap concepts. They were running power and counters. Clint Kubiak will still run some of that stuff, and I would not be surprised. In fact, I would be surprised if it's not a part of their game plan tonight, that they're going to be patient with their run game. They're going to have their bread and butter zone concepts, the wide zone stuff, but they are going to mix in more of the gap than you normally see because this is a defense that is aggressive, they're opportunistic, and they will leave gaps open against those plays. I expect that Clint Kubiak is going to be astute to that.
Definitely, and just looking at, quite simply, when the Seahawks have at least 27 rushing attempts this year, they're 2-0. So if you want to go that simple. And for me, two other big points. Maybe I'm getting a little, hot trigger finger just because of watching Monday Night Football with the Lions. But when you get fourth and short, fourth and maybe 2 and under or under 2, go for it unless it's deep in your own territory. Be aggressive because Arizona's allowed the second most fourth down conversions this year. And it's just a mentality. And I know with the Thursday night football thing, first of all, that's exciting TV if you're on primetime when you're going for it on fourth down. But I think that the Seahawks have shied away from that kind of situation a little too much. I think this is an opportunity, like you said, interdivision game. You don't want to go 0-2. You want to get – because whoever loses this game also will be the only team in the division not currently with a winning record. And like you said, super competitive division. You got to chase those edges like Mike McDonald likes to say, and I think one of those could be on fourth down. You pick your spots, maybe with the barn push with AJ Barner, and just getting into those situations where you can go for it on fourth down, where it's 3rd and 6 turns into 4th and 1, things like that. Pick your spots. Don't be blindly just going for every fourth down. But I think the Seahawks need to be a tick more aggressive on those kind of situations. And then another one is be diligent with pass protection, because like we've mentioned, the Cardinals have a very good front seven, I think, or at least defensive line. You got Calais Campbell, like you mentioned, who's I don't know if he's found the fountain of youth or he's from the planet Krypton or something. He's just continually is an elite player. Josh Sweat, who he signed with the Eagles last year, making a lot of noise and was a big part of their Super Bowl run. He's on the Cardinals now and still being just as effective, or if not more so, in Arizona. You got Zaven Collins, and so these guys will feast on pass protection mistakes. The Seahawks have been pretty good so far at protecting Sam Darnold, which, wow, what a refreshing thing to say, that the Seahawks have really done a pretty good job at pass pro. And Sam Darnold's played a role in that too. So I think just with the veteran presence he is and the offensive line being on the same page, just be sure that your pass protection calls are on time, and you're making sure that stuff is tightened up and airtight, because this defense can take advantage of mistakes like that. And also that's equally true when you have a good pass pro, like we mentioned in the first segment. The Cardinals are down in their secondary, so if you get that protection, that allows you to take some deep shots, which I think could be there for this offense.
Yeah, and that lends it to my last key here. I think you have got to, if you're Clint Kubiak, I think you've got to have a few shot plays that are sitting in your pocket, and you got to be ready for that opportune time to strike, because this is a Cardinals defense that is going to be aggressive. They are going to send 5-6 rushers frequently. They are going to do that to try to speed things up for Sam Darnold and hit him a bunch. Like, they're going to be trying to be aggressive. But they're in the middle of the pack. They've given up 13 explosive pass plays, according to True Media this year. They're right in the middle of the pack. The Seahawks are number 2 in the NFL, tied for number 2 with 17 explosive pass plays. I think those opportunities will be there. I don't think you come out just chucking it downfield. That hasn't been a big way that they've gotten explosive plays anyway. They've gotten a lot of yards after the catch, but I think you open up those opportunities with the timing-based passing game, your run game, staying patient with it, but you've got to have the pass protection and the communication against the blitz, running backs being able to pick their guys up. All those little details, you have to be able to do that, because if you call shot plays and you're not picking those up, Sam Darnold is going to get shellacked, and you could potentially have turnovers coming off that. So those two things are going to go together, but I think there will be opportunities to take those shot plays in the passing game, especially with the injuries the Cardinals have at the cornerback spot. Flipping the switch now to defense. I feel like the defensive game plan compared to past years is going to be very similar, because I think anytime you go against Kyler Murray, just him in particular, I understand that quarterbacks can be under 5'11" and be successful. There's been a couple of them that we've seen in the league, and Kyler Murray's had his moments. But if you can get that interior pressure where you're not allowing creases, you're getting pressure in his face, he can't see over the top, and your edges are containing, like, all these things have to go together. It's way easier said than done to do this. But if you can have your three-headed monster in the middle, holding serve, getting immediate pressure, pushing back the pocket, and you've got your edges being, I call it cautiously aggressive, where you're still rushing hard, but you also are not creating those cutback lanes for the quarterback to escape. You're not allowing him to get outside of you. It is a contained, aggressive pass rush. Those two things, anytime you play Kyler Murray, I think Pete Carroll is doing it. Mike McDonald has been doing it. You just have to execute that. To me, that is first and foremost anytime you play Kyler Murray. I don't care what team he's playing for, who's the coordinator. It's just the size limitations there. I think you can take advantage, and he can get really uncomfortable quick, and he'll make some bad decisions when he ends up in positions like that. But I think it is a systematic approach when you're going against him. That is, again, it's easier said than done, but collapse that pocket. Don't let there be creases for him to escape. Contain, aggressive pass rush. I know those two things might not seem like they go together, but there is a way to do that. The Seahawks have been very successful the last 3 or 4 times against Kyler Murray with that. If they can continue, that gives them a much better chance to win this game.
Yeah, and just looking back at last year, that last meeting where the Seahawks won 16-6, or sorry, the first meeting, they sacked him 5 times. And last year in 2 total games against Seattle, Kyler Murray had just 5 rushing attempts for 25 yards total, like at all. And because he can get that in one run sometimes. And the Seahawks did a really good job of containing him last year. And I think Mike McDonald will probably have a similar game plan this time. And then, with how the offensive line is kind of constructed for the Cardinals, find the rat and interior pressure and pressure that point. And right now it might be old friend Evan Brown if he's healthy. Just looking at some of the grades and some of the pressures allowed, that interior of the offensive line for the Cardinals, I think is the soft underbelly.
And he gave up 5 pressures to Leonard Williams last year. So
yeah, and it's not like the Seahawks don't have guys in the interior that can't do it. I mean, you got Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy having a breakout sophomore year, Jaron Reed, more on him later. It's ripe for the Seahawks to have a pretty good attack on the interior, and then also with that, forcing Kyler Murray to beat you downfield, because I'm looking at the numbers. One of my favorite stats to look at when evaluating an opposing quarterback is average depth of target, which kind of tells me how aggressive they've been. He is second to last in the NFL in average depth of target, meaning it's just like you said, a lot of dink and dunk. Don't even allow those layups. Be Sean Kemp with the Sonics. Dikembe Mutombo, no layups, nothing in the paint here. You are going to have to make the threes. You're going to have to make the outside jumpers because you're not getting anything in the paint today. And that's going to be, I think, what the Seahawks need to do with this dink and dunk offense is kind of because usually you hear like, keep everything in front of you. Don't let anything behind you. I think it's somewhat of an opposite approach, because I think that's when it gets uncomfortable for Kyler Murray, is when he has to kind of look into the intermediate or downfield. And really him and Marvin Harrison Jr., there's been some disconnect there, which has been kind of puzzling. Making him make those uncomfortable throws, and don't give him those layups. Just swat it out of the paint. And then also in the run game, make it one-dimensional, bottle up Kyler Murray. Yeah, Trey Benson, I think, is due respect. I think, even though he's a backup.
And DeMarcado's a good player too.
DeMarcado, it's not just because they lost James Conner does not mean that they're all of a sudden not going to be able to run the ball. Trey Benson and DeMarcado, I think, are very capable backs. But like I said, he's tied. Murray's tied with the team lead with 3 10 or more yard rushes this year. Seahawks were really good last year at limiting his rushing attempts and yards. I think if they can do that again, replicate what they did last year, Seahawks are going to win.
Yeah, if you let Murray get his run game going, especially if there's scrambles where he's able to get outside, it goes back to the first thing I mentioned. You got to have contained, but if you are letting him get to creases and he's able to find daylight, and he's a jitterbug in space, he can do a lot of damage. It completely opens up the entire playbook for the Arizona Cardinals when he's able to play what I call mayhem ball. When he's able to do that, it causes problems. The Seahawks have done a really good job the last few times they've played of completely shutting that down. And without James Conner, I still think he is the heartbeat of that offense. So that is a significant loss. But he was averaging 3 yards per carry this year. They've got a guy in Benson averaging 6. So this is still a run game that I think offers some potency. Seattle has got to keep the quarterback from being a big part of that. I think if they do that, it certainly is going to help them be able to put the Cardinals in a position they don't want to be in this football game. When we come back, we've got picks to click. We've got game predictions as we wrap up our pregame Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The NFL season's officially underway. We're in week 4. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props such as how many touchdown catches Jackson Smith and Jigba will have against the Cardinals, building a same-game parlay with multiple prop bets from week 4, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more thrilling, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. Nick's certainly going to be doing that. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, pregame Thursday edition. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined on today's show by my co-host, Nick Lee. And a special thanks to all the 12s for tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. And for your second listen, don't forget to check out Locked On NFL, a double dose with Tyler the Madman Rowland, giving you a shot of espresso to start your football day while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to the end of the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Seahawks Cardinals getting ready to battle at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, a pivotal early season NFC West Battle Royale in prime time. Nick, let's get to our picks to click. And I feel like you and I are going in a little bit of a reversal from last week in terms of who we picked on the offensive side of the football. My pick a week ago didn't have the game that I thought he was going to have, but still had a 20-plus yard reception nonetheless. But you are hoping that the real magic goes for Cooper Kupp this week.
Definitely. And I'm kind of thinking, now JSN's going to get his. He's WR1 for sure. What I do think is in the limited resources the Cardinals do have in the secondary, which is now limited with Will Johnson being out. Max Melton, I think, moves into that kind of more experienced top, cornerback spot. He's allowed the 14th most passing yards by any player this year per Pro Football Focus. So secondary is right for the picking. So I'm picturing them using a lot of those resources to slow JSN down. Cooper Kupp is going to reap the results, and he has more yards and touchdowns versus the Cardinals than any other team he has played against. Obviously, being in the NFC West his entire career helps with that. So he knows how to get yards and score against the Cardinals in this building. And so whatever that is worth, I think Cooper Kupp's going to have a big game.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the hot hand here, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who undoubtedly, no doubt in my mind, he would have been the first player in franchise history with 3 straight 100-yard games, if not for the fact the Seahawks called off the dogs. At the end of the third quarter, he had 96 receiving yards last week, over 100 the first 2 games. I think without Will Johnson, I think Will Johnson, that Michigan-Ohio State battle would have been really fun on the outside. I think that hurts the Cardinals the most when it comes to defending Jackson Smith-Njigba. And teams have been bracketing him. It has not mattered. He has found ways to get open, and Sam Darnold's gotten the football to him. Arizona's an aggressive defense. I just think Clint Kubiak is going to find a few select times that he is going to pull the trigger at the right time. JSN has been the big play guy downfield. I think he's going to strike for over 100 receiving yards, and I think he gets not 1, but 2 touchdowns tonight. I think tonight is Thursday night JSN time, and he is going to go out and have his best game of the season so far. Let's go to the defensive side now. You mentioned earlier a certain name that I think you're going to go with for your hot hand as far as the pick to click on defense for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I've been really feeling the interior defensive line. Of course, I could go Leonard Williams. I picked Byron Murphy earlier this year. Like I mentioned, the interior line of the Cardinals, while their offensive line as a whole is fairly good, their interior is where you can make some chaos happen. And Jaron Reed, just has been as solid as ever. And last year, his second highest graded game was at Arizona. And he's coming off of his highest graded game of this season against the Saints. So I'm going to go with Jaron Reed. And I don't want to spoil my prediction, but he has something to do with how this game ends for me in my little prediction. So, Jaron Reed.
I'm going Devon Witherspoon. He's coming back from the knee injury. I think he probably could have played Sunday, but Seattle decided to give him a few extra days to make sure he was ready for this one. I don't know what it is, but the rays of sunlight or whatever in Phoenix, like he shows up. He turns up in Phoenix. He always has big games in Arizona, and I just always remember the picture his rookie year just kind of staring over Kyler Murray after he decked him on a run. Like, his return defending Murray as a runner is critical in this game. And I think he gets a couple tackles for loss. He hasn't had an interception since his rookie year. That changes tonight. Devon Witherspoon is going to get an interception on Kyler Murray and continue his run of success. He has played at an extremely high level at State Farm Stadium the first 2 times in his career. I think he continues that tonight, especially with a little extra rest to make sure that he is good to go. going into tonight's game. It's prediction time, and you mentioned you sounds like you've got kind of some crazy ideas of what's going to play out. And look, this is the house of horrors that is State Farm Stadium. Even though Seattle has won most of those games, always seems like there's weird crap that happens in this stadium when these two teams get together.
Yeah, and I'm going to continue that. So I'm going to go, maybe not too weird, because weird things do happen in Glendale for sure. Seahawks have won 7 in a row against the Cardinals and 4 in a row at Arizona. 5 of those 7 wins have actually been by 10 plus points, by the way. I think the defense is feeling it. I don't think Kyler Murray is that good. And I think just top to bottom, the Seahawks have a better roster. So I'm going to go with this. The Seahawks have played 10 overtime games since 2019. They're due for one here. This is overtime, weirdness, and Jason Myers has been nails. So give me the Cardinals win the coin toss. They take possession first play, strip sack. Jaron Reed sets him up for a primetime walk-off field goal. Seahawks win 24-21.
Oh, boy. I put 23-20 for my score on here for you, but it's a 3-point win regardless.
3-point win, yes.
Yeah, so either way, the 3-point win with a field goal. I think this game is not going to be that close. And my rationale behind it is I think Mike Macdonald has found something. I think he has pushed the right buttons here with what they've got complimentary football-wise. I think the injuries the Cardinals have, not just the ones that we mentioned for this week. I mean, they've got some pretty darn good players that are not going to be out there that are on injured reserve too. Like they've had much worse fortune with their injuries. And I just think Seattle's got a better roster at 80% of the positions. If Kyler Murray has a great game, absolutely Arizona can win this one. But I think Seattle's defense, I think they have figured him out. I think they know how to get to Kyler Murray and how to rattle him. I don't think Murray's figured out how to rebound from that. And I just think Seattle's got more weapons. I think the injuries in the secondary, JSN's going to get those 2 touchdowns. I just think Seattle is the more complete team, and I think they're going to show it tonight. 27-16, and Seattle is up more than that in the fourth quarter. Arizona gets a few points to make it a little closer. I think Seattle wins this one fairly handily. We will see what happens, though, when these teams get together at the farm tonight in Glendale. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at Nick Lee 51. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up late tonight, I will have a post-game show, hopefully covering another Seahawks win. That'll be coming your way a few hours after the final play in Glendale. Enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy the game. Go Hawks.